The security officer at Naval Station Norfolk told me my own father had taken my name off the guest list for his retirement ceremony. For 1 second, I thought I had heard him wrong. The morning was bright and brutal, the kind of Virginia heat that made the pavement shine like wet glass even before noon. I stood outside the officers' club in a pale blue dress, holding a cream-colored invitation in my right hand and a small clutch in my left. Families moved past me in summer suits and polished shoes. Wives adjusted medals on old uniforms. Kids carried flowers. Sailors laughed too loudly because ceremonies always made people emotional before they wanted to admit it. And I stood there like a trespasser. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the young security officer said, his ears turning red under his cap. "Your name isn't on the access list." "It should be," I said. "I was invited." He checked the tablet again, swiped once, then twice, then glanced toward the glass doors behind him. "I understand, ma'am. But the note here says access removed by request of the host." "The host?" He swallowed. "Captain Hayes. My father." A man could spend 38 years in uniform and still be a coward in the one room where it mattered. Through the glass, I saw him standing beneath a huge American flag, white hair trimmed close, shoulders square, smile controlled. Captain Richard Hayes looked exactly the way he wanted the world to remember him: disciplined, respected, untouchable. A retired lion of the United States Navy. A man who could talk about honor until everyone in the room forgot to ask who paid for it. He saw me. He didn't look confused. He didn't frown. He didn't step toward the door. His eyes landed on me for less than 2 seconds, cold and clean, and then he looked away as if the problem had been handled. That was how I knew it wasn't a mistake. My own father had erased me on purpose. Inside, my brother Connor stood near the stage in his dress whites, grinning while older officers clapped his back. My mother, Diane, hovered beside him with the desperate pride of a woman who had spent her whole marriage clapping for the right child. She reached up and brushed something invisible from Connor's shoulder, even though his uniform was already perfect. He looked like the son my father had ordered from Central Casting, tall, broad, charming, loud in the easy way men get to be loud when the world has always handed them a microphone. He had spent my life watching rooms open for Connor and narrow for me. In our house in Annapolis, then later in Norfolk, the Navy was not a career. It was our family religion. My father believed in ships, ranks, chain of command, and sons. Especially sons. He framed Connor's first Little League trophy. He saved Connor's first uniform from junior naval camp. He cried the day Connor got into the Naval Academy, then gave a speech so long the barbecue went cold. When I got accepted into a classified naval intelligence program, he looked over the letter and said, "Well, at least it's stable." Stable. That was his word for anything. He didn't understand and didn't respect. Connor got war stories before he had seen war. I got silence after I had already helped stop one. I was the daughter who asked too many questions, memorized maps, built encryption puzzles for fun, and didn't care who could bench more weight in the garage. At 16, I won a national cyber defense competition. My father came late to the awards ceremony, stood in the back with his arms crossed, and told me on the drive home, "It's good you found something. But don't confuse computers with command." At 22, when I finished at the top of my intelligence training class, he said, "Paperwork matters too." At 29, when I missed Thanksgiving because of an operation I could not name, Connor joked across the table that I was probably color-coding spreadsheets for admirals. Everyone laughed. My mother said, "He's teasing, Evie. Don't be so sensitive." I was not sensitive. I was classified. There is a difference. My work lived behind locked doors, encrypted briefings, dead phones, and nights when I stared at satellite feeds until my eyes burned. I could not bring home medals and lay them on the dinner table. I could not explain why a carrier strike group changed course at 3 a.m., or why a team of special operators came home when every projection said they wouldn't, or why a foreign attack never made the news because we killed it before it reached the public. Operation Harbor Shield, 41 hours tracking a cyber intrusion aimed at disabling navigation systems across the Atlantic Fleet. Operation Silent Lantern, a SEAL team cut off in hostile waters, their signal buried under interference, Munich finding a way to open a 7-minute window that brought them home. Operation Black Current, a merchant vessel carrying radiological material under a false registry, intercepted 62 miles before it reached American waters. My family never knew. My country did. At home, though, I was still the desk girl. The one who didn't carry the Hayes legacy properly, the one who made my father's jaw tighten when someone asked what his daughter did. He would say, "She works in Navy administration," then turn immediately to Connor's deployments, Connor's leadership, Connor's future. I spent years telling myself it didn't matter, standing outside his retirement ceremony, banned by my own blood while strangers walked in carrying flowers, I realized it had mattered every single day. "Ma'am," the security officer said gently. "If you'd like, you can wait outside while I ask someone to come speak with you." I looked at him. He couldn't have been more than 24. He had no idea he had been shoved into the middle of a family execution. He was just following orders, which was how almost every cruel thing in a uniform began. "No," I said. "Don't bother." His shoulders loosened with relief. He thought I was leaving. I turned and walked across the lot toward my black SUV. Each step felt slow, deliberate, almost peaceful. Behind me, laughter floated through the glass doors. Inside, the program would start soon. There would be speeches about loyalty, sacrifice, honor, and family. My father would stand on stage and present Connor as his living legacy. My mother would dab her eyes, people would smile at the beautiful symmetry of it all. The great captain. The proud son. The spotless name. And the daughter removed from the list. I opened the back of my SUV and lifted the garment bag lying flat beneath a folded blanket. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I unzipped the bag and touched the white fabric inside, pressed and immaculate. My dress uniform had been prepared for another ceremony later that evening, one my father did not know about because he had never cared enough to ask why Navy protocol had contacted me directly. A small velvet case sat beside it. Inside were me shoulder boards. 3 silver stars. I had spent most of my adult life learning how to disappear. Not because I was ashamed, but because my job required it. I had sat in rooms where my name was replaced by code words. I had signed documents that would not be declassified until I was old. I had watched men with louder voices receive public applause for missions my team made possible. I had accepted all of that because national security was not theater. But family humiliation was not national security. My father had mistaken my silence for smallness. I changed in the back seat of my SUV, awkwardly and carefully, using tinted windows and discipline to protect what dignity I had left. I pinned my hair tighter. I fastened every button. I adjusted the jacket across my shoulders. When I placed the 3 stars where they belonged, something inside me stopped pleading. I was not the little girl waiting for my father to turn around. I was Vice Admiral Evelyn Hayes, Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence Operations. And the room that had been prepared to erase me was about to learn my name. My phone buzzed before I closed the door. Secure Channel. Admiral Margaret Whitaker, my direct superior and one of the only people in the building who fully understood why my presence mattered. "You at the club?" I typed back with one thumb. "At the gate. Removed from list." Her response came in less than 5 seconds. "By whom?" I looked toward the glass doors. My father was laughing with a senator now, his hand resting proudly on Connor's shoulder. "Captain Hayes." There was a longer pause. Then Whitaker sent one line. "Walk in wearing the truth." I slipped the phone into my pocket and started back toward the entrance. The same security officer looked up when I approached. His face changed so fast I almost felt sorry for him. First confusion. Then recognition. Then horror. He straightened so hard his heels struck the pavement. "Admiral," he said, voice cracking. "Check the correct list this time," I said. He looked at the tablet. Whatever screen he opened now had my real clearance attached to it, because the color drained from his face. "Yes, Admiral." "My apologies, Admiral." "Don't apologize for following the list you were given," I said. "Just remember who gave it to you." He opened the door. Cool air hit my face. So did silence. The ceremony had already begun. The room was packed with officers, veterans, spouses, reporters from local military publications, and enough polished brass to make the light feel sharper. A banner behind the stage read, "Honoring Captain Richard Hayes, 38 years of service." Beneath it, a slideshow showed my father shaking hands, boarding ships, standing beside flags, looking stern at docks and proud at promotions. There were 22 photos of Connor. There were 0 of me. The master of ceremonies, a commander with a voice built for banquets, stood at the microphone. "Today, we celebrate not only a decorated career, but a legacy continued through his son, Lieutenant Commander Connor Hayes, who represents the next generation of this proud naval family." That was the moment I stepped into the center aisle. At first, only 3 people turned. Then 12. Then the whole room. The commander's sentence died in his throat. My father froze beside the stage, his smile still attached to his face but no longer alive. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Connor stared at the stars on my shoulders like they had been placed there to personally wound him. I walked slowly, not because I wanted drama, but because I refused to hurry for people who had spent decades making me wait. The sound of my shoes against the polished floor seemed impossibly loud. Every eye followed me. I could feel questions crackling through the room. Who is she? Why didn't we know? Why does Captain Hayes look like he just saw a ghost? Then a chair scraped sharply against the floor. From the front section reserved for special warfare, a man stood. He was older than when I had last seen him, broader through the shoulders, with asker cutting pale through one eyebrow. Commander Daniel Reeves. Operation Silent Lantern. He had been the senior officer on that team, the man whose last transmission before we found him had been, "Tell me, wife, I tried." He faced me, brought his hand up, and saluted. "Vice Admiral Hayes," he said, voice rough enough to carry. Another man stood. Then another, then an entire row. Within 10 seconds, the front half of the room was on its feet. SEALs, intelligence officers, pilots, analysts, sailors, men and women who knew only pieces of what I had done but enough to understand that those pieces were made of lives. The salute spread like a wave. 300 people stood for me. No music. No announcement. No permission from my father. Just recognition. I returned the salute with a controlled hand, but my throat tightened so hard I could barely breathe. I had imagined many things on the walk-in. Anger. Satisfaction. Maybe my father's embarrassment. I had not imagined this. I had not imagined men I had never hugged, sailors I had never met outside secure rooms, standing because at some point my invisible work had touched their lives. My father's ceremony had finally found its truth, and it did not belong to him. I lowered my hand and continued down the aisle. Admiral Whittaker stood near the stage, her silver hair cut short, her expression unreadable. Except for the smallest flash of fury in her eyes. She had been waiting. That meant she had known some version of this might happen. I took the empty seat in the first row, the one no one had reserved for me. A white card on the table beside it read, "Guest." Not daughter. Not officer. Guest. I turned the card face down. My father moved first. He came toward me with the slow steps of a man trying to regain command without making it obvious he had lost it. "Evelyn," he said under his breath. "Captain." That one word did more damage than shouting would have. His jaw tightened. He hated being outranked by his daughter. He hated even more that I had used his rank instead of his title as my father. "This is not the time," he said. "You chose the time when you removed me from the list." His eyes flicked toward the room. People were pretending not to listen, which meant everyone was listening. "You don't understand what I was trying to prevent." I almost laughed. "A distraction?" His face hardened. That was answer enough. Connor appeared beside him, red-faced, humiliated, angry in a way that looked borrowed from our father. "How long?" he demanded. I looked at him. "How long what? How long have you been walking around like this?" He gestured at my uniform, at the stars, at the reality he could not digest. "How long have you been hiding this from us?" 15 years, depending on what you're asking. "You let us think you were some analyst in a basement." "No," he said. "You chose to think that. There's a difference." His mouth twisted. "You always did this." "Did what?" "Act like you were above everybody." That one landed somewhere old. Connor had been 10 when Dad started comparing us. He had not invented the battlefield. He had just enjoyed winning on it. I leaned slightly closer. "Connor, I spent my whole life making myself smaller so you could keep feeling bigger. Don't confuse my silence with arrogance." My mother made a sound behind him, half gasp, half sob. For the first time in years, I looked directly at her and did not try to rescue her from discomfort. She had let this happen. Maybe she had not signed the order, but she had set the table for it every Sunday dinner, every birthday toast, every time she said, "Your father is proud in his own way," while he praised Connor out loud. The master of ceremonies bent to pick up the papers he had dropped. The microphone squealed. The whole room flinched. Admiral Whittaker stepped forward and took the mic before he could speak. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice calm enough to slice steel. "Before we continue with Captain Hayes's retirement program, there is an omission we need to correct." My father closed his eyes. That was when I knew. This was bigger than the access list. Whittaker held a folder in her left hand. Navy blue. Official seal. My stomach tightened. I had seen folders like that at classified briefings and award boards. I had also seen powerful men try to bury what was inside them. Vice Admiral Evelyn Hayes was not added to today's program as a guest, Whittaker said. She was scheduled to be recognized as the senior officer whose work shaped several operations represented in this room. A murmur moved through the crowd. My father turned his head sharply toward Whittaker. "Admiral, with respect," she cut in, "you were informed 3 weeks ago." The room went colder than the air conditioning. Connor looked at our father. "What?" My father did not answer. Whittaker continued, "Because several portions of Vice Admiral Hayes's career remain classified, public recognition has been delayed more than once. Today was selected because many personnel connected to those operations would already be present to honor Captain Hayes's service. It was meant to be a rare moment when both public service and silent service could stand in the same room. I could feel the blood beating in my ears. I had known. Whitaker wanted me there. I did not know she had planned recognition. I did not know my father had been told. She opened the folder. Instead, we learned this morning that Vice Admiral Hayes's name had been removed from the event list and all program references had been altered. My mother whispered, "Richard." My father's face had gone gray, but his spine stayed straight. Pride is a disease that convinces men they are still dignified, while they are bleeding on the floor. Whitaker looked at him. "Captain Hayes, would you like to explain why?" He did not. The silence lasted long enough to come an answer. I looked at the stage, at the banner, at the slideshow frozen on a photo of my father and Connor aboard a destroyer. The caption read, "A legacy off service." For years, I thought my father had ignored my career because he didn't know. Because classification had built a wall between us. Because maybe, somewhere underneath all that male pride, Hugh would have been proud if only he understood. But he had known enough. And when the Navy tried to say my name, he tried to cut it out. That hurt more than the gate, more than the empty chair. More than every joke about paperwork. Because ignorance can be forgiven. A choice has to be faced. Whitaker looked toward me. "Vice Admiral Hayes, you are not obligated to speak." I stood. My knees were steady, but my heart felt like it had been thrown down a flight of stairs. I walked to the microphone. My father stepped back without realizing he was doing it. For the first time in my life, he made room for me. The room watched. I looked out at all of them, sailors, officers, wives, husbands, sons, daughters, my mother crying silently in the front row, my brother looking like his whole childhood had just been rewritten, and my father staring at a point somewhere beyond my shoulder because eye contact would have required courage. "I was 8, I said, when my father told me the Navy was built on honor. I believed him. No one moved. I was 16 when I learned that some people use the word honor when they mean image. I was 22 when I learned that service can happen in rooms no one photographs. I was 34 when I learned that bringing people home alive matters even if your own family thinks you are just filling out reports." My voice did not break. I was proud of that. I did not come here to take anything away from my father. I came because I was invited by the Navy I served. I came because I believed there was enough room in this family, and in his ceremony, for more than one version of service. Connor lowered his eyes. It turned slightly toward my father. But I was wrong. About one thing. I thought I had been invisible because my work was classified. Today I learned I was invisible because someone decided the truth made the wrong person shine. My mother sobbed once, quietly, like she had tried to swallow it and failed. I looked back at the room. To every daughter who has ever been seated at the edge of the table while everyone toasted the son they wanted more, listen carefully, do not shrink to protect someone else's pride. Do not apologize for surviving neglect with excellence. And do not let a family that failed to recognize you become the measure of what you are worth. The applause did not begin immediately. It was too heavy for that. First came silence. Real silence. Not awkward. Not empty. The kind of silence that settles after truth enters a room and no one can shove it back outside. Then Commander Reeves clapped once. Another. Clap joined. Then another. Soon the room thundered. I stepped away from the microphone before tears could betray me. My revenge was not yelling. It was not begging. It was not exposing every private wound for pity. It was standing in the uniform my father wanted hidden and letting the room decide who had dishonored home. Admiral Whitaker resumed the podium when the applause faded. "Captain Hayes's retirement recognition will proceed," she said. "However, the remarks submitted regarding family legacy and operational influence have been withdrawn pending review." My father's head snapped up. There it was. The second blade. He had not only removed me. He had written himself and Connor into places they did not belong. Whitaker's tone remained polite, which somehow made it worse. Additionally, references crediting Lieutenant Commander Connor Hayes with strategic contributions to Operation Harbor Shield and Operation Silent Lantern have been removed from the official program. Those references were inaccurate. Connor went white. I turned to him slowly. He looked at our father, then at me. "I didn't know they put that in." But his voice was too fast. And there, in the flicker of Hayes, was the truth neither of us had expected to meet in public. He knew something. Not everything, maybe. But enough. My father gripped the back of a chair. "This is unnecessary." Whitaker closed the folder. "No, Captain. What was unnecessary was attempting to rewrite classified service records to support a retirement narrative." The room erupted in whispers. I felt strangely detached, as if I were watching someone else's family burn from across the street. Connor took a step toward me. "Evie, I didn't ask for this." I stared at him. He had not called me Evie in years. "What did you ask for?" I said. His lips parted, then closed. My father answered for him. Your brother deserved his moment. The words left his mouth like a confession and a defense at once. Something inside me went quiet. Not calm. Not healed. Quiet in the way the ocean goes flat before a storm, and I deserve to be erased? I asked. He looked at me then. Really looked. His were hard, but behind the hardness was panic. Not remorse. Panic. He was losing control of the story, and men like my father confuse control with truth. You don't understand what it was like, he said. The room had gone still again. I almost smiled. What was like? His voice dropped. To spend my life building a name, only to have Midotter outrank me in secret. There it was. Not concern. Not misunderstanding, not protection. Envy. The ugliest family. Secret is not always abuse or money or betrayal in the dramatic ways people expect. Sometimes it is the quiet humiliation of a parent who cannot bear the child he dismissed becoming larger than him. My mother whispered, Richard, stop. But he had already said enough. I walked closer, until only a few feet separated us. You were proud when Connor wore the uniform, I said. You were proud when Haggett promoted. You were proud when he made mistakes and called them lessons. But when I served quietly, when I gave up holidays, relationships, sleep, and any chance of explaining myself, you called it office work. His mouth tightened. I continued, you didn't erase me because I embarrassed this family. You erased me because I proved your rules were wrong. Connor's face crumpled, then hardened again. He was fighting the truth because the truth meant his pedestal had been built from pieces of me. Whitaker signaled to a staff officer near the side entrance. He stepped forward with another folder and handed it to her. My father saw it and lost the last bit of color in his face. That was when I understood there was still more. Whitaker didn't open the folder immediately. She looked at me first, and for the first time that day, her expression softened. Vice Admiral Hayes, she said, there is one additional matter. You may want to sit down. I did not. I had already been seated at the edge of too many rooms. Say it, I said. Whitaker opened the folder. An internal review was opened 5 months ago after inconsistencies appeared in nomination materials connected to Lieutenant Commander Hayes's advancement package. Connor whispered, no. My mother looked at him. Connor? Whitaker's eyes stayed on Thepage. Several accomplishments listed in that package appear to have been derived from classified summaries operations led or coordinated by Vice Admiral Hayes. The summaries were accessed improperly through a retired officer's advisory credentials. Every head turned toward my father. My father said nothing. Connor looked sick. I felt my stomach drop, not because I was surprised my father would belittle me, but because stealing from me required a different kind of intimacy. Someone had not merely ignored my life. Someone had opened pieces of it, carved out what looked useful, and tried to hand it to my brother. My records? I said. Whitaker nodded once. Redacted summaries. Not full operational files. But enough to misrepresent influence. I turned to Connor. Did you know? He looked at the floor. That was answer 1. Connor, I said, sharper. He lifted his face, his eyes were wet and angry. Dad said it was family context. He said it was okay because the details were sanitized. He said nobody would ever connect it to you. My mother covered her mouth. I almost could not breathe. For years, I had protected missions, teams, sailors, and strangers. And inside my own family, my father had been quietly using me shadow to polish my brother's medals. You read them? I asked. Connor shook his head, then stopped. Some. How many? I don't know. You don't know? I didn't understand half of it, Hess snapped, then immediately looked ashamed. I didn't. I just knew Dad said it would help explain why I understood joint operations. A laugh escaped me. It sounded wrong, too brittle to be mine. You used operations you didn't understand to prove leadership you didn't have? Connor flinched as if I had slapped him. My father stepped between us, still trying to command a battlefield that no longer existed. Enough. This is a family matter. Whitaker's voice was ice. No, Captain. Improper access to classified operational summaries is not a family matter. The room seemed to tilt. My father's retirement ceremony had become an inquiry before the cake was even cut. And the worst part was that I could not enjoy it. People think revenge feels hot. Mine felt cold. It felt like standing in a room full of witnesses while realizing the people who raised you had not simply failed to love you well. They had used you. They had taken your silence, your discipline, your classified life, and turned it into a ladder for the son they preferred. I looked at my mother. Did you know? Her tears spilled harder. No. I knew your father wanted Connor highlighted. I didn't know about files. I didn't know he had taken your name off until this morning. This morning, I repeated. And you still came inside. She tried to speak. I stopped her with one raised hand. Don't. That word broke something in her face, but I could not carry her guilt for her. Not anymore. Whitaker closed the folder. The formal review will continue through proper channels. This event will not be used to litigate classified matters further. Then she turned to the room. What can be said publicly is this: Vice Admiral Evelyn Hayes has served this nation with distinction, discretion, and courage. Many of you are alive because people like her do work that cannot be printed on banners. Today, that service will not be removed. She stepped aside. A chief petty officer I did not know brought a small case to the estage. I stared at it. Whitaker looked at me. Admiral, please join me. My legs carried me forward, though I barely felt them. This commendation has been delayed 2 times due to classification restrictions, Whitaker said. Today, with appropriate redactions and approvals, the Navy recognizes Vice Admiral Evelyn Hayes for extraordinary leadership in intelligence coordination, cyber defense, and operational recovery efforts across multiple theaters. The room stood again. This time, I did not try to stay stone-faced. My eyes burned. My hands trembled once before. I locked them at my sides. Whitaker pinned the medal to my uniform. It was not the largest medal I had ever received. It was not the most secret. It was not the one that had cost me the most sleep. But it was the first one my family had to watch me receive. When Whitaker stepped back, she saluted. I returned it. Behind her, my father looked smaller than I had ever seen him. Connor looked broken. My mother looked like a woman realizing. She had been married to a version of honor that only worked when it served him. After the ceremony, the official program collapsed into strange fragments. People still shook my father's hand, but their smiles had changed. Politeness replaced admiration. The local reporter who had planned a soft retirement feature kept glancing at Whitaker's staff, clearly deciding which questions would get him banned from every base in Virginia. The cake sat untouched for 20 minutes. Connor disappeared near the side hallway, then came back with red eyes and no appetite for applause. Officers approached Mainstead. Some said, "Congratulations, Admiral." Some said, "Thank you," with a weight that told me they knew more than they could say. Commander Reeves waited until the crowd around me thinned. Up close, I saw how much older he was than the last time his voice had come through. Static into my headset. "My daughter is 14 now," he said. I smiled faintly. "I remember your wife was pregnant during Silent Lantern." "She was. I made it home 3 weeks before Lily was born." He swallowed. "You gave me that." "No," I said. "Your team held long enough. We found the window." He shook his head. "Admiral, men like him get statues in people's heads because we kick doors. People like you keep us from dying behind them. Don't let anyone call that paperwork." I looked away, but not fast enough to hide the tears. He reached into his jacket and handed me a folded note. "Lily wrote this when she found out I might see you today. She doesn't know the details. She just knows someone helped her dad come home." I took it carefully. On the outside, in purple ink, it said, "For the lady who helped save my dad." That almost undid me more than the medal. My father watched. From across the room. "Good. Let him. Let him see that the life he dismissed had put fathers back at dinner tables and daughters in their arms." I slipped the note inside my jacket, next to my heart. Connor approached me when most of the guests had shifted toward the reception tables. He looked different, without certainty smaller, but maybe more honest. "I'm sorry," he said. The words came out rough and used. I studied him. "For what?" He blinked. "What? For what, Connor? Be specific. I'm tired of apologies that ask me to do the work." His throat moved. "I'm sorry I let Dad make me the center of everything." "That's a start." "I'm sorry I laughed when he called your work admin." I waited. "I'm sorry I used those summaries." His voice broke. I knew it felt wrong. I told myself it didn't matter because they were vague and because Dad said everybody does that kind of thing. I told myself you didn't need credit because you didn't seem to want any. That was convenient. "I know. Do you?" His eyes flashed, then softened. "I'm trying to." I looked at him and saw the boy who had once pushed me out of the treehouse because Dad had called it men's territory. I saw the teenager who told his friends I was weird because I beat them at strategy games. I saw the man who had accepted a throne and never asked what it was built on. But I also saw fear. Not fear of me. Fear of having to become someone without our father's script. "I don't know what happens to your review," I said. He nodded. "I know. I won't lie to protect you. I know. Andy won't destroy you for sport." That made him look up. I meant it. Maybe not because I was generous. Maybe because I refused to let my father turn me into another person who used power to decide whose truth counted. Connor's eyes filled again. That's more than I deserve. Yes, I said. It is. He accepted that. For the first time I could remember, my brother did not argue. My father came last. He waited until the reception had thinned and the staff had begun clearing plates. The banner still hung behind the stage, but now it looked ridiculous, too clean for what had happened beneath it. My mother stood near the windows, arms wrapped around herself, watching us like she was afraid any movement would shatter what remained. My father stopped 3 feet away from me. For decades, he had filled rooms with authority. Now he seemed to be measuring each breath. Evelyn, he said. I said nothing. He looked at the medal on my chest, then the stars on Miss Holder's, then finally my face. I did know you had advanced, he said. Not a Lafayette. But enough. The honesty was so late it felt almost insulting. Why? I asked. His mouth tightened. Because Connor needed a clear path. No, I said. Try again. His eyes hardened for a second, the old captain rising. Then it faded. He was tired. Or maybe exposed men always look tired once their performance is over. Because I didn't know how to be proud of you without admitting I had been wrong about you. That landed differently. Not softly. Not healing. But differently. I watched him struggle under the weight of his own sentence. You raised me to believe honor meant truth, I said. Then you punished me for becoming evidence against yours. His eyes shone, but he did not cry. My father considered tears a kind of disorder. I was unfair to you. I laughed once, quietly. Unfair is when someone gets a bigger slice of cake. You removed your daughter from a military ceremony, altered a program, and let your son benefit from summaries of her classified work. Flinched. Use the right words, I said. You betrayed me. My mother sobbed behind him. My father closed his eyes. When he opened them, he looked older than 67. I betrayed you. The room felt very still. I had wanted those words for so long that hearing them did not feel like victory. It felt like touching a scar and realizing it could still hurt. Do you want forgiveness? I asked. Yes. That was the first simple answer he had given all day. You don't get it today. His face crumpled for half a second before he controlled it. Evelyn, no. Today you are embarrassed. Today people saw you, today your story fell apart in front of officers whose respect you wanted. That isn't the same as remorse. I am remorseful. Maybe. But you don't know yet which part hurts more, what you did to me, or the fact that everyone found out. He had no answer. That silence told Mayhay was not ready. I stepped closer, close enough that only he could hear my next words. You do not get to call me your legacy when you tried to bury me under Connors. He looked down. Someday, I said, when you can say what you did without shrinking it, without defending it, without making it about pressure or tradition or family image, then maybe we can talk. My mother moved toward me. Honey, please, I turned to her. She stopped. I needed you at the gate, I said. Not after the applause. Her face collapsed in pain. Maybe that was cruel. Maybe it was necessary. I had spent too much of my life protecting people from the consequences of how they treated me. I left the officers' club before anyone could ask for a photo. Outside, the sun had begun to drop behind the water, staining the sky orange and silver. The base felt different at evening, less ceremonial, more honest. Sailors crossed the lot carrying garment bags. A gull screamed overhead. Somewhere far off, a ship horn sounded low across the harbor. I raked my SUV and stopped beside the driver's door. For the first time all day, I let myself shake. Not collapse. Not fall apart. Just shake. I pressed one hand against the cool metal of the door and breathed until the world steadied. Then I pulled out Lily Reeves's note and opened it. Dear Admiral Hayes, my dad says some heroes are quiet. Thank you for being one of them. I got to grow up with him because of you. I read it 3 times. Then I sat in the driver's seat and cried like the 8-year-old girl who had waited for her father to clap and the 22-year-old officer who had pretended not to care and the grown woman who finally understood that being unseen had never meant being unworthy. 6 months passed before I saw my father again. The review moved quietly, as official things do when powerful men are involved and classified records are tangled beneath family lies. My father's retirement benefits remained, but a ceremonial commendation connected to family legacy contributions was withdrawn. His advisory access was suspended. Connor's advancement package was reopened, corrected, and delayed. He was not destroyed, but he was no longer allowed to stand on work he had not done. My mother called 4 times before I answered. The first 3 messages were soft disasters. Your father is suffering. We need to heal as a family. You know he has always loved you in his way. I deleted those. The 4th message was different. I failed you too. I am ready to say that if you are ever ready to hear it. I listened to that one twice. A week later, I drove to the house in Norfolk where my parents had moved after leaving Annapolis. It was a brick colonial with a flag out front, trimmed hedges, and a porch my mother decorated according to every season as if pumpkins and wreaths could prove a family was warm. For years, stepping into that house had turned me into a lesser version of myself. I would become quiet air in the entryway, careful in the kitchen, professional at the dinner table. I would ask Connor about his career and watch my father come alive. I would offer one sentence about mine and watch the subject die. This time, I wore civilian clothes and carried no apology. My mother opened the door. She looked older. Not dramatically. Just honestly. The kind of folder that comes when denial stops holding your face up. "Evelyn," she said, "Mom." She did not hug me. Immediately. That mattered. Instead, she stepped aside and said, "Thank you for coming." The living room was almost the same. Navy photos. Framed citations. A Model destroyer in a glass case. Connor's academy graduation picture on the mantel. My father's retirement shadow box leaning against a chair, not yet mounted, but something had changed. On the wall near the hallway, where there had once been a framed photo of Connor shaking hands with an admiral, there was now a photograph of me in uniform. Not hidden in a side room. Not placed on a shelf behind a vase. On the wall. I stopped walking. My mother saw me notice. Her eyes filled, but she did not speak. Maybe she was learning that some moments needed space more than explanation. My father stood in the dining room doorway. He wore a navy sweater instead of a uniform. Without the uniform, he looked less like a monument. And more like a man who had spent too long hiding inside one. "Vice Admiral," he said. Then he swallowed. "Evelyn." The order of those words told me something. He still needed the rank to reach the daughter. But at least he was trying to walk the distance. Connor was already at the table. He stood when I entered. That surprised me. "Evie," he said. I looked at him. "Evelyn," he corrected. I sat across from him. Not at the edge. Not beside the kitchen doorway. Across. Dinner was awkward, but not fake. That was an improvement. My mother had made roast chicken, green beans, mashed potatoes, and the lemon cake she used to make when she wanted everyone to pretend things were fine. But this time, nobody pretended. My father asked me about international coordination. Not office work. Not paperwork. International coordination. I answered carefully at first, avoiding classified details out of habit and law. He listened. Really listened. He did not interrupt to compare. He did not pivot to Connor. Once, he asked, "How many people were on your team for Harbor Shield?" And when I said, "Across agencies, nearly 80, he sat back like he was understanding the size of a room he had never entered. Connor stared at his plate for most of the meal. Finally, he set down his fork. "I resented you," he said. "No." One moved. I looked at him. "I know." He shook his head. "No, I mean before I knew anything. Before the rank. Before the files. I resented the idea of you. That sounds like Dad's work." It was. But I let it become mine. He rubbed both hands over his face. "When we were kids, every time you were better at something, he changed the rules so it didn't count. If you won a competition, it was nerd stuff. If you got a scholarship, it was not leadership. If you stayed calm, you were cold. If I got angry, I was passionate." My mother closed her eyes. Connor continued, "I should have seen it. I didn't because the rules benefited me." That was the most honest thing my brother had ever said to me. "I don't need you to hate yourself," I said. "I need you to stop letting comfort excuse cowardice." He nodded slowly. "I'm trying." My father stood suddenly and walked to the sideboard. For a moment, I thought the conversation had become too much and he was leaving. Instead, he picked up a folder and brought it to the table. Not a navy folder. A plain manila one. He placed it in front of me. "I wrote this," he said, "not for the Navy. Not for a review. For you." I did not touch it. "What is it?" "A statement. Everything I did. Taking you off the list. Asking for the program changes. Giving Connor access to redacted summaries I had no right to share. The reasons I told myself. The real reasons underneath." My chest tightened. "Why?" "Because you told me not to ask forgiveness until I could say what I did without shrinking it." The room went silent. I opened the folder. His handwriting was still military neat. The first line read, "I betrayed my daughter because I was ashamed that she had become greater than the limits I placed on her." I had to stop there. My eyes blurred. For months, I had imagined a dozen ways my father might try to return to my life. I expected excuses polished into apologies. I expected family pressure. I expected him to mention age, tradition, misunderstanding, classification, stress, Connor, the ceremony, anything that would make betrayal sound less intentional. I had not expected that sentence. Read it later, he said quietly. Or don't. But I wanted it to exist outside my head. I closed the folder. I'll read it later. Hannah did. My mother reached for a tissue. I need to say something too. I braced myself. She looked directly at me, and for once she did not look like a woman trying to keep peace. She looked like a witness. I chose comfort over you, she said. Every time your father dismissed you, I softened it instead of stopping it. I told myself I was protecting the family from conflict. But I was protecting myself from having to challenge him. Her voice broke. You were my daughter. I should have stood beside you before strangers did. That one hurt in a deeper place. Because I had been angry at my mother for so long, I forgot there was still a child in me waiting for her to notice the empty chair. I did not forgive her in that moment. But I believed she was telling the truth. I don't know how to be close to you yet, I said. She nodded through tears. I know. I don't know if I can trust this. I know. But this is better than pretending. She pressed the tissue to her mouth and cried harder. After dinner, my father asked if I would walk with him to the porch. Connor helped my mother clear plates, which might have been the first domestic task I had ever seen him complete without applause. The evening air smelled like cut grass and the Elizabeth River. My father stood beside me at the railing, hands folded, staring at the flag moving in the dark. I used to think legacy was a straight line, he said. Father to son. Name to name. Rank to rank. I said nothing. I was wrong. The porch light hummed above us. You built something I didn't understand, he continued. And instead of learning from it, I punished you for making my version look small. I looked at him. Yes. He nodded. No defense. No flinch. That is going to be hard for me to live with, he said. It should be. A sad smile touched his mouth. You always were direct. No, I said. I used to be quiet. Direct is new. For the first time, he gave a small laugh that did not ask me to join it. Then he reached into his sweater pocket and took out something small. A photograph. He handed it to me. I recognized it immediately. I was 11, standing beside a science fair display about coded naval signals. My hair was crooked. My smile was too big. I was holding a blue ribbon. In the background, slightly blurred, my father stood with his arms crossed. I found it in a box in the garage, he said. I remember that day. So do I. I told you it was impressive but not practical. You said Connor's baseball game showed more discipline. He closed his eyes. I did. I stared at the photo. I kept that ribbon for 10 years. Where is it now? I threw it away after you missed my intelligence graduation. His face tightened. Good. Some truths deserve to land. He looked out at the street. I can't get those years back. No, I can't make myself the father you needed then. No, but if you ever allow it, I would like to know the woman you became without my permission. That sentence stayed in the air between us. It was not enough. But it was something. I folded the photo and placed it inside my jacket pocket, beside Lily Reeves's note, which I still carried more often than I admitted. I'm not promising anything, I said. I know. I may leave some calls unanswered. I deserve that. I may get angry later about things I seem calm about now. I deserve that too. I looked at him then. And you will not use my career to rebuild your pride. He met my eyes. No, if you speak about me, it will be with truth or not at all. Yes. If Connor rises, he rises on his own work. Heck knows that. Do you? He absorbed that like a proper hit. I am learning. That was the best answer he could have given. Not perfect. Not dramatic. Not clean. Learning is less satisfying than redemption, but it is more honest. When I left that night, my mother hugged me at the door. She asked first, which mattered. The hug was stiff for the first second, then her hand moved to the back of my head the way it had when I was little, before the house became a courtroom where Connor always won. I let myself stand there for 3 breaths. Not more. But not less. Connor walked me to the driveway. I started therapy, he said abruptly. That almost made me laugh. That is the most terrifying sentence you've ever said. He smiled weakly. Yeah. Turns out being raised as a golden child is not the same as being loved well. I looked at him. That was another truth I had not expected. I was angry that Dad loved you more, I said. But maybe he loved the role you played more than he loved either of us. Connor looked toward the house. Through the window, we could see our father helping our mother with dishes, awkwardly, like a man handling unfamiliar machinery. Yeah, Connor said. Maybe. He put his hands in his pockets. I don't expect us to be close. Good. But I'd like to earn being less of a stranger someday. I studied him. Start by never calling my work paperwork again. He winced. Done. And never stand silently while someone else does. He nodded, done. I got into my SUV. Before I closed the door, he said, for what it's worth, when those 300 people stood up, I hated you for about 5 seconds. I raised an eyebrow. Then I realized I didn't hate you, he said. I hated that they saw you clearly before I did. That was the first thing he had said that sounded like a brother instead of a rival. I drove away with the windows down. The road curved toward the water, and Norfolk opened around me in lights, shipyards, bridges, base gates, gas stations, quiet neighborhoods where families were eating late dinners and arguing about homework and living ordinary lives protected by people they would never know. For years, I thought my greatest victory would be making my father proud. Then I thought it would be making him regret dismissing. Then, for one terrible afternoon, I thought it would be watching his ceremony collapse under the truth. But as I drove past the harbor, I realized my real victory had happened much earlier. It happened in every room where I kept working after being underestimated. In every operation where I chose precision over ego. In every lonely holiday when I surveyed a country that knew my value even if my family didn't. In every moment I did not become bitter enough to betray myself. The world loves public vindication. It loves the gasp, the salute, the powerful man exposed, the golden sun forced to look down. I won't lie. Those moments mattered. Watching 300 people rise after my father tried to erase me felt like justice walking through a locked door. But the deeper justice was quieter. It was sitting at a dinner table 6 months later and realizing I no longer needed the seat they had denied me. I could take it or leave it. I could accept an apology without handing over my boundaries. I could love my family from a distance measured by truth, not guilt. I could be a daughter without becoming small. A week after that dinner, Admiral Whittaker called me into her office. She had 2 cups of coffee on her desk and a view of gray water under a gray sky. I heard Captain Hayes submitted a personal statement to the review board, she said. He did. Voluntarily. Yes. Whittaker leaned back, that took something. It took being caught first. She smiled faintly. Often does. I looked out the window. Do you think people change? I think people reveal what they value when change costs them something. That stayed with me. My father's change had cost him his myth. My mother's had cost her peace. Connor's had cost him the comfort of being the chosen one. Mine had cost me the fantasy that if I became impressive enough, the people who hurt me would automatically become kind. But losing fantasies can be freedom. Months later, I spoke at a leadership program for young officers. I had been asked to discuss cyber warfare, operational secrecy, and decision-making under pressure. I did all of that. I gave them frameworks, failures, lessons, timelines. I watched them take notes. At the end, a young woman in the back raised her hand. Her voice shook slightly when she asked, "Ma'am, how do you keep going when people close to you keep making you feel like your work doesn't matter?" The room went still. I could have given her a polished answer about resilience. Instead, I told her the truth. You stop bringing your value to people who keep misplacing it, I said. You build proof in places that can hold it. You let your work be excellent, but you do not use excellence as a begging bowl. And when the day comes that the door opens, you walk through it like you belong there before anyone noticed. She cried. I pretended not to see until she smiled. That night, when I got home, there was an envelope in my mailbox. No return address, but I recognized my father's handwriting. Inside was a copy of the old science fair photo, restored and framed in a simple silver border. Behind it was a note. I should have clapped louder. I am trying to become the man who would have. I stood in my kitchen for a long time holding that note. Then I placed it on the counter beside Lily Reeves's letter. One note from a girl thanking me for bringing her father home. One note from my father admitting he had failed to show up for his daughter. Both mattered. But only one had ever been necessary for me to know who I was. I am still not sure what forgiveness will look like in my family. It may come slowly. It may come unevenly. It may never become the soft, movie-ending kind where everyone gathers under warm lights and the past dissolves. Real forgiveness, if it comes, will have boundaries. It will have memory. It will require my father to keep telling the truth when no one is applauding him for it. But I know this. I am not standing outside the gate anymore. I am not waiting for a young officer to find my name on someone else's list. I am not looking through glass at a family that placed me at the edge of its own story. My name is mine. My service is mine. My life is mine. And the next to me a room tries to decide whether I belong, I will not knock softly. I will walk in wearing the truth.